Jill, thank you once again for coming today. Very good to have you on again. I know you've been on in the past.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more specific and in the weeds today about the targeted small business application process. I think there's a lot of questions about the process, so I'm happy to dive into it.
Awesome. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your role at IEDA?
Sure. I've been with IEDA for a little over 4 years. I'm new to the Team Lead Innovation and Apprenticeship role, but previously I worked as a project manager with Apprenticeship and the Targeted Small Business Program, which has now been kind of funneled into the innovation team. So with these programs, I focus on work-based learning and small business ownership and entrepreneurialism. I have a background in working on business and operational enhancements for nonprofits and private companies and startups in Nebraska, Colorado, and now in Iowa.
Excellent, thank you. So let's get started. Can you tell us a bit about what the Targeted Small Business Program is and what the need for it is in Iowa?
Sure. So the Targeted Small Business Program was established in 1985. It's been around for a number of years as a way to identify businesses that are 51% owned, operated, and actively managed by what we call targeted group persons. So individuals that fit within 4 categories. Individuals who are women, have minority status, are service-disabled veterans, or are individuals with disabilities. So the one thing to keep in mind is that threshold of 51% can be met with a combination of individuals with each of those statuses. It doesn't have to just be one person managing the business. It can be multiple individuals that reach that 51% ownership threshold. The businesses must be located in the state of Iowa. So we get a lot of questions about, I am an out-of-state business, I'm women-owned, can I become certified? And this program is really to identify those businesses here in Iowa that we want to support within those categories. Businesses must also be operating for a profit. And we get a lot of questions about this one because operating for a profit just means that you're a for-profit business, you're not a nonprofit. So we do not acknowledge nonprofits in this program. It is for those for-profit businesses, but that doesn't mean you have to be making a profit. You might just be starting out. And so it's really a matter of just being in business versus a nonprofit status. Then the annual gross income of $4 million or less. And this is computed as an average of the 3 preceding fiscal years. And this is where we really define that small business title. Now, one thing I will say is I get sort of eyebrows raised a lot when we talk about the 4 million threshold. And there are a handful of businesses that every 2 years when they come to renew, we review their income and have to say, I'm sorry, but congratulations. You're graduating from our Targeted Small Business Program. It does happen. And we're so happy to be a part of that journey when we see that.
Yeah, that's a great threshold to go over. So now that we know about the general overview of the program, can you tell us what the process looks like? How does a company become TSB certified?
Sure. So we'll walk through the process. And one thing I will note, sometimes we get questions about why we need various documentation, and we're going to talk about the documentation we need. This program was established with the idea of certifying businesses to do business with the state. So the state identifies these businesses, and then we'll talk a little bit later about how they do business and the goals that they set to do to work with the businesses in this program. So some of the documentation we require is to help then when the state looks to these businesses for their products or services to help some of that be set up. So we'll start with the application process. There is an application process. We're going to talk a little bit about that and then talk through the steps of our review and the follow-up that we might do. But it really does start with the application. So on iowaeda.com/TSB, that's where you'll go to start the application. Now there's a brief eligibility survey when you start the application. Sometimes there's confusion about what this survey is and what it's intended. Most of it is intended to help make sure that if you might not qualify, then you don't get all the way through the application and then find out, from us that you don't qualify. It asks questions about whether those first 4 questions that we talked about, are you a 51, or is your business 51% owned by one of these 4 groups? Are you operating for a profit? Again, for profit doesn't mean you're making money. Are you located in Iowa, and do you make less than $4 million? So you have to answer yes to all of those questions in order for the registration link to appear. And once you do that, you'll be asked to create a profile. This is similar to any other system where you're going to log in and out of it. You might do this a number of times as you collect the documentation for your application. And one of the things we actually didn't have before was the ability to save an application and process in an online system. So this was just created a few years ago to allow you to log back in and work on your application over time. The one thing that I would encourage is to remember your username and password. We get a lot of requests for that, and we're always happy to look it up, but just to remember that when you set that up. And then you're going to build your personal profile. So there's sort of two steps. You build the personal profile, and this is your account information of who you are, your login, your password. But then you'll move on to the business profile and application. So just a few things to kind of know as you get into it. There are a few steps. We do collect some of that upfront information so that we can save your information in the system so that it's there when you log back in.
All right, so it's essentially a portal that they get through, and then this is the personal.
This is the personal profile. This is the first step, and again, it's just going to ask you for some basic information. Organization name, title, nickname, website are not required, but what we do need, you'll see the asterisks next to it are your name and first name. And here you can also change your password at a later point, change your username if you'd like. But once this is done, that's when you click update at the bottom and go on to the next page. So the next page is where you start the business profile. Now, I'm not going to go through each of these 8 steps. I'm going to talk about them a little bit. But one thing to note is you do want to fill out the fields that have an asterisk next to it. So on this page, name and type of business is what we're really trying to get. We need the business name. We need the structure. Are you a sole proprietor or an LLC or a corporation? We need the date that it was started and your federal ID number, or if you're operating with your social security number, that is fine as well. We just need that information. This site is secure, and this is a question we get a lot. We spent a lot of time developing this out to make sure it was secure and the information could be collected in a secure fashion. Now, the last 2 questions you'll notice do not have asterisks next to them. And this is about NAICS codes, for those that are familiar, and NIGP codes, which is a mouthful to say, but it's essentially the state version of NAICS codes. These are things you can add to your application at any time. They're really a way for others who might want to search because they know NAICS codes. They're a way for others to search and find you by those codes, but they are not required. So you'll notice no asterisk is next to those questions. So when you're done here, and when you're done with all of the pages in the application, you'll click Next and Save. Now, it's really important as you go through the application and keep clicking Next and Save. Otherwise, if you move off the page, it doesn't save. So other pages that are included in the application, contact information. I know that seems redundant because you've created a personal profile, but sometimes we found that the person who's filling out the application isn't the same as the person that should be contacted, or the same information as the business information. So the person's email may not be the same as the business email. And so that's what kind of information we'll collect there. Under owners, we're looking for all owners of the business, not just those that are targeted small business owners. So if you have a 51% ownership with another individual who owns 49% and they are not a targeted group person, we'll still want to see that relationship. So we would ask for both owners to be listed there. That section allows you to identify the percentage of ownership that each owner has, whether or not they fit into any of the 4 categories: women, minorities, individuals with disabilities, or service-disabled veterans. And that helps us just to understand the ownership of the business, and especially in the case of multiple owners, kind of who is doing what and who is serving in what role. Same with step 4 for board members. We like to see who the board members are if you're a corporation. Now, this also is one of the things that not many people know, but as a part of the requirements for the Targeted Small Business Program, it's that there's 51% ownership and board representation. And the way that we look at that could also be in their voting abilities. So you might have 2 people on your board, but as long as the owner, for instance, with 51% ownership has voting rights commensurate with that ownership, then that would be okay. So because they have the ability to outvote at a 51% level the other person's vote. So those are things that we do ask for. I know, again, sometimes a few people have said, well, what does it matter who's on my board? And it's a weird stipulation in code that we look for that too. We also ask for licenses and any services that you provide. Now, this goes back to what I mentioned about some of our state buyers looking to do business with our targeted small business owners. In certain instances for contracting, for instance, you're required to hold a contractor's license. And so our state buyers are going to want to verify that. And so it's just easy for us to grab that information. And then it's a way for you to also promote yourself. If you're in an industry, some industries that require licensing, in some cases, you can say also, you know, I'm a licensed service provider in this industry. We'll ask for your operations, and this is really more about how did you come into business? How did the business get started? And what is it that you do? And this is your opportunity to really tell us about your business, what the services are that you provide. This is also a category that shows up on the public portal side when you become certified and somebody searches for your name. So I would encourage people to spend some time with that part of the application, because it does become public, but it also helps us understand what it is that you do and gets us just more familiar with your business. So the next section, documents, I do want to spend a little bit more time on, so we'll move forward to that.
So what are the types of documents that I need?
Yeah, so this is a question that we get a lot, and I know this is really small wording on the screen, but I wanted to spend some time on this page because there's a few things that we see get missed, and we were just talking beforehand that tells us we need to go back through and do some coding and bold some things. But one of the things that we ask for is taxes. So you'll see that we spend a lot of time on this page talking about the taxes that we need. And a couple of things, tax documents help us to verify, if you're using your social security number, for instance, it helps us to verify that against an IRS database. And that's a really solid way for us to verify that information. Helps us to verify your address and your name and all of the information that you've provided to us, and that the business wasn't started prior to the date that you indicated. Not that you would try to hide for $1 million, but if we saw your taxes and you said, it just started today and I don't have any revenue, but it turns out you've been making a lot of money and then wouldn't qualify for TSB or small business status, that helps us to verify that. It also helps us to just verify ownership of the business. So we do ask for 2 years of taxes, and 2 years of taxes, we often ask for business taxes, but if you're just starting out, what we would ask for is then just your personal taxes. Again, it helps us to verify some of the other things that I mentioned, even if it's just your personal taxes if you're just starting out. But the other thing that I would like to call attention to on this page is a link that says Tsb Required Documents. Yes, thank you for airing over. It's small, it's sometimes missed, but this is going to open up, and we'll flip to it in a second, but I'll talk real quickly through this. It's going to open up a list of documents that are required in addition to taxes for each of the business types that might be applying. And so we really just want to call attention to that because it can get missed, as well as the link below to the TSB affirmation and authorization document. That is a document that we do ask be signed and notarized and submitted with your application, just verifying that all the statements on the application are true. Now, again, another place we get questions is how to load the documents. So there is a document loader at the bottom of the page. You click the add document. It opens up a window that allows you to attach, I think, Word and PDF documents as well as JPEGs. So if you're ever getting a message that says it can't attach, sometimes it's too large or it's not the right file type, and those documents can be emailed to us. So you just let us know and we'll say, go ahead and submit. We'll attach them to your application for you if you were to ever have troubles with that.
Awesome. So if they do have trouble with that information to email will be at the end of the application? Yeah. Okay.
And before we go on to the next slide, I do want to note there is a step beyond this before you do hit submit, and it's where you can upload your logo and what's called a capability statement. These two things are optional, and so if you don't have a logo, you're just starting out and not familiar with a capability statement, not to worry at all. You can upload both of them later after the fact once you get certified. A logo does show up in our online directory when your name is clicked on as a capability statement. A capability statement is truly, truly optional, as it's really more of a resume for any business that you've done with a government entity. It's kind of used by government entities to kind of understand the work you've done in the past. But if you're not going to do business with the government or haven't done it, it again does not have to be uploaded, and certainly not at the time of your application. So this is the documents list that I was referring to, and I want to note that this can also, it can be found in the application, but it can also be found on our site. If you go to www.iowaeda.com/TSB, and we can even put that up at the end if we need to, there's a lot of information about our program, and along the right-hand side of the site is a box called resources, and then the hard copy application can be found in that side of the site and downloaded. And in the hard copy application, you'll find this list. This list is going to tell you the different types of things we'll need. And at a minimum, for every applicant, we will certainly need the taxes and the affirmation document, which we just talked about, as well as a copy of a driver's license or birth certificate or passport or Department of Veterans Affairs or documentation about your disability. So those are the kind of the three things. It helps us to verify you're in business. It helps us to verify whom you are, helps us to verify your statements with that notarized document. Now, you might be good at that point if maybe you're doing consulting from your home. That might be all that we need. But additional considerations to look at here, if you're a sole proprietor, and that's kind of where the documents for all applicants applies. If you're a sole proprietor, think about whether you're providing products or services, especially in construction, liability insurance would be required. If you have employees that are not contract workers, so are not 1099 workers, we would need to see verification of workers' compensation, as that is a requirement in the state of Iowa. If you have licenses, going back to, if you're an electrician, you have an electrical license, we would to see documentation of that as well. The purchase agreement, if you did purchase the business, if you have that, that's really helpful for us understanding the narrative of your business. So I just purchased this business from my father-in-law, for instance, and he may have not been a targeted group person. And so the Secretary of State site might show that he was the previous owner of the business, but I can show the purchase agreement and my targeted group person documentation, and it tells the story that yes, this business was previously owned by someone who might not have qualified for our program, but now because of this purchase, it now does. So those, again, are things that just help us to understand what your business is and what it is that you do and who you are. And again, that signed and notarized document. So those are some basic things. You'll see that we also have a list for LLC applicants. Typically, I would say we can find your articles of organization on the Secretary of State site. They make it really easy for us to do that, which is great. But if you have multiple owners in the business as an LLC, we will want to see an operating agreement. Again, that goes back to telling us who is doing what and what are the roles, and making sure that that business is, as we've talked about, owned and operated by a targeted group person at the 51% level. And that's what that kind of document tells us. Similar for partnership applicants, it would essentially be an operating agreement. For corporation applicants, we look for two main things, and we might ask for a few more things, but mostly it's bylaws. So bylaws are required for corporations to establish in the state of Iowa. It's very similar to an operating agreement, tells kind of who's doing what, and then the meeting minutes of who is in a president role, vice president, et cetera. Again, tells us who's doing what role in the business. And so that's where we would probably start. If you send those two things, that's a pretty good start. We might ask for more information. And then you can see below, there's some options for the various targeted group person forms, which is a very government way of saying documentation of eligibility for the program. We'll accept a number of different forms.
Okay, Joe, forgive me if this is a silly question, but what about businesses operating with an ITIN? Are they eligible to apply?
We'd have to take a look at every application. It's hard to determine until we see the application itself.
Okay. Signature page.
And yeah, this is the signature page. This is what we do ask to get notarized. It does verify that you are authorizing us to get information about your background to determine eligibility for the program.
Awesome. So what are the benefits of becoming TSB certified and some of the economic impacts?
Sure. Well, one of the biggest pieces that we talk about is the state purchasing, and I'm going to get into that. But since we took this program over about 4 years ago, we've done a lot to build up other areas of the program as well. And I'll talk about each of these and then we'll kind of highlight them a little bit. So the search page, as I mentioned, there's a new portfolio or portal where targeted small businesses can be searched and found. Logos, if you have a logo, can be displayed. Information about your business can be shown on the site. This is a pretty big enhancement from what was available before. And this is something that we promote both to our state buyers and to private buyers who are looking to do business with diverse owned businesses. And if I may, I'm going to plug an event that we do have this Thursday through the Greater Des Moines Partnership, a webinar talking about how to create a supplier diversity program. So for those that are working for companies that are trying to encourage them to buy from more diverse suppliers, that webinar will be a great opportunity to learn how to advocate for that. It's really about how do we utilize programs like the Targeted Small Business Program to help our larger corporate buyers, for instance, buy from diverse businesses. And that's exactly what we try to promote that search page as a method to do that with. Networking, sadly, we haven't been able to do networking lately for obvious reasons, but one of the things we had done with the program is just create some networking events around the state. We tried to bring together partners that are already working with small businesses and bring together both our small business owners, but also others who might, again, want to work with our targeted small businesses. So we had some really great discussions, really great just informal networking. And I always say with those networking events, I actually am more of a fly on the wall because it's about businesses in the program networking together. And I think we hear that from small business owners so often, that they are looking for network and collaboration with other small business owners. So we just try to see ourselves as another platform for being able to do that. And I know that I go to a lot of networking events, or used to, where I'd see very similar faces. And so it's a kind of a great opportunity to meet a new network because it's very expansive through the state of Iowa. Resources, we have a large connection to various small business resources around the state. So we haven't as often put on our own workshops. We are very reliant on partners like yourself to host workshops with us, but we can really point small business owners to various places if they have questions about a specific area of small business ownership, or just want to connect with the Small Business Development Center, for instance, is a great place that we often point our small business owners with questions. Iowa Economic Development Authority also manages a program or a site, Iowa SourceLink, iasourcelink.com. And if you haven't been there, I would encourage business owners to check it out. It's, again, a great place for accumulation of all of the small business resources that can be found around the state, and to ask questions and then find the resource providers that are available. And media, we do a lot of media promotion with our program. We've been able to kind of use our media and social networks to promote targeted small businesses, the program itself, and just get leverage through that way, so that, again, it's a passive place for IDA to help support businesses in the program and highlight and acknowledge what type of businesses they are and the importance of the businesses in our state. And again, through social, we do a lot of shout outs on social, both personally. I personally am always checking out social media to be able to do shout outs to various small business owners, and then through our social media networks at IDA, which has a much broader reach than I do personally. I can guarantee that. Excellent.
And this is the directory then.
Right, so this is the directory. Again, it's a lot better than what we previously had. It's searchable by TSB type, product or service category, or service description. You can type in multiple counties. So if you're looking for a 3-county wide, you can do that search in one search, and various combinations of searching as well. Now here's the real numbers, I always say, when we talk about what this program is about. So like I said, the Targeted Small Business Program was established for the identification of businesses in the 4 categories we've talked about, to be able to do business with the state of Iowa. The state of Iowa has a number of agencies, almost 70 state agencies, and each of them are setting goals each year for how much business they will do with targeted small businesses. Now, collectively, some agencies do a better job than others, but collectively in 2019, they spent over $44 million with targeted small businesses. So there's a significant amount of funding from the state doing work for products and services that the state needs with our targeted small businesses. There are a few different places to find some of the information about what the state buys. And as we get targeted small businesses into the program, we connect them into some of the places that they can start to learn some of that. We connect them with CIRIS, the Center for Industrial Research and Service, which is a really great service that offers free, at no cost, support to businesses in terms of how to do government contracting. And they actually host a webinar on our behalf called Your Targeted Small Business Certified. Now what? Because I think that was a question a lot of folks had of, well, I'm certified, but now what do I do with this? How do I leverage the certification? We're actually in discussion with CIRIS in terms of how to even maybe expand that out a little bit more, maybe consider more of like a podcast and do some really interesting in-depth discussions with our state buyers to, I think, peel back the curtain on what state procurement looks like. Additionally, one of the things that was passed this last year was an increase in the threshold that the state of Iowa can purchase directly from targeted small businesses without going through the RFP or the bidding process. So what this means is the state ultimately, when it does RFP, typically looks at the price. But a targeted small business owner has the ability, or the state has the ability, to work directly with a targeted small business owner without going through that process. And what does that look like? Rather than putting something out to bid on a state bidding site, the buyer at the state might go to the targeted small business directory. So that's why it's important that you're certified and in the directory, and maybe search for the services they're looking for. So for example, marketing. And they might find 3 marketing companies in the area that they're looking to do or to do work in. And they might send an email to those 3 companies, those 3 targeted small businesses, and ask for an informal quote. So we ask businesses to be competitive in the quoting if they are contacted in that way, but the state can do business with them as long as that total amount of the purchase is under $25,000. And so they still might do sort of that informal bidding, but utilizing the targeted small businesses only because of this threshold. It previously was set at $10,000, but we took a look at some of the data about what the state purchases. And as you can see, the state purchases a lot, and a lot of it is over the $10,000 mark. So we had worked with the Department of Administrative Services on legislation this last year to increase that threshold to $25,000.
So, and then this is your reach in the community.
Yes. The last piece, I really just, like I said, wanted to push that we just really try to help promote this program. We've been doing a number of conversations lately as we talk with various business owners about economic growth post-COVID, Ying Sa being the co-chair of those discussions. And one of the things that I think has come out is that we really need to do a better job of marketing. And we feel like we do a lot of marketing. We need to do better. And so we're going to continue to push out information about the program and its benefits and reach, and webinars just like this about how to apply and what are the things that we're asking for and what are some of those nuanced questions that we might ask that you know have questions about. So I think in addition to just all of the work that we do, we acknowledge that we can continue to grow the program. And so we are still doing a lot of listening from our businesses on how to make it better too.
Awesome. So we'll take a couple minutes now so that we can address some questions. I think we got a few in. Hold on. Stop sharing. All right. So one is they wanted to provide the TSB application website in the chat box.
I can certainly type that in.
All right. And are there any fees to businesses to participate?
No, great question. There are no fees to apply to participate. It used to be that we had a $25 application fee, and we removed that a few years ago, acknowledging that that was just one more hurdle, you know, so no fees to participate. I do want to kind of circle back though to just the application process. You know, once you submit all your information, it does take us within 5 to 7 business days usually, sometimes a little longer if we have higher applications coming in. to get back to you. And if you haven't submitted everything, that is okay. You know, it is not an immediate denial because we didn't have all the documents. It just will mean that we'll email you back and ask you for those documents. We do kind of go by a first in, first out policy. So then once we get that information back, we'll put you back in the queue. And once we had a chance to review it, we'll follow up again. So I do want to clarify that it's not a matter of having to have a perfect application. If you have questions, it's always okay to submit it, and then we can follow up with you later too.
Excellent. And then can you briefly go over who would qualify to be a TSB certified company? One question was, is it only for women or can men also apply?
Well, men can apply if they fall into one of the other categories. So there's those 4 categories of individuals who are women, individuals who have disabilities, individuals who have minority status, or individuals who are service disabled veterans, or a combination of those individuals reaching that 51% threshold of ownership.
Thank you. Those are all the questions that we have. And thank you again, Jill, for coming and educating about the TSB program. This is very valuable for Community CPA and the community. So.
Well, thank you for having us. And I think my information was shared. So if you have follow-up questions, or even you're in the program and want to provide suggestions, we're always open to hearing those, and certainly appreciate the input and support from Community CPA.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'll see you again next time.